Welcome to the Entrepreneurs Forum. We are so excited to be sitting down with the one and only Larry Mandelberg. And I am ecstatic for this reveal, this podcast, whatever you'd like to call it, but I am super excited for it. So, without further ado, our lovely guest, Mr. Larry.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. And would you like to share with everybody the awesomeness that is you and what you're going to tell us about?
Well, I love sharing the information that's in this book. I love talking about it. I love what I do, and what I do is help organizations be successful. And what this book is, when I was a teenager, I'm fifth generation in a family-owned business. So I like to joke and say that I have 180 years of business experience, because my family was always very proactive about what in modern society is called paying it forward, right? So we evolved, we started in hides and furs and evolved into scrap, agricultural scrap, and then we got into agricultural moving parts that wore out as ag started getting more automated, like belts and bearings and stuff like that. And eventually it moved into what's called the automotive aftermarket, which is everything that happens to a car after it's sold. So there's the new car market, and then there's what's called the aftermarket. They don't even say car. It's the aftermarket. And
What's
it's been
left
that way.
behind?
Yeah, well, it's been that way for about 130 years. So one day my dad said, how did we go from no automobile manufacturers to 300 automobile manufacturers to 3 in about 30 years? How did that happen? And I didn't really care about that, although I was fascinated by it. What I cared about was, why would any business fail?
Yeah.
Right? Because my whole life has been experience of successful businesses, right? I mean, the family-owned business has transitioned over the centuries, literally over the decades and centuries, and been very successful and thrived in a good business. Why would it ever fail? And yet it happens all the time. You see your favorite coffee shop go out, you see your clothing store go out, you see your department store go out. So when I was a teenager, I said, I don't care about that. I want to know why any business fails. So I started doing formal research and realized that I had to identify a specific demographic, and I identified a very specific demographic. And simply saying it's non-retail, and it's how do I say this? Autonomous businesses that have control over their own future. So if you say we're going to launch a new product or we're going to open a new site, you don't have to get permission from an investor. And they're organizations that want to survive, that want to continue to exist beyond the duration of the current leadership team, right? So there's just a few things like that. It's independent of legal structure, independent of industry, independent of market, independent of revenue. All of the stuff people usually measure businesses by, I didn't think really mattered. So I spent 23 years researching this, and I got the answer. I figured it out. I did a classic scientific approach where you create a hypothesis and then you build a construct to run the hypothesis for validation. And then when you get the validation, you refine the hypothesis and end up with a theory. And then you take the theory and you try to prove it wrong.
I
So
love it.
23 years of research to get the theory and 6 years of proof of concept, and it works. The book is about 70% data that I gathered, written in a quite entertaining format, I might say.
I do say so myself. I love the idea of that. But just for our listeners, before we get too far, you titled this book such a great name. Tell us what you titled it. For anybody who can't see his picture right now.
Yeah, so the book is called Businesses Don't Fail, They Commit Suicide.
Such a great, captivating name.
Yeah, I mean, businesses kill themselves. And then the subtitle, which on all good books, the title is meant to grab your attention when you're scanning books. And then the subtitle is supposed to tell you why it's valuable. And the subtitle is How to Survive Success and Thrive in Good Times and Bad. So what I found was that successful businesses tend to fail because they don't deal well with change. So change is the catalyst.
Yeah.
And there's this thing, I call it the eternal conflict. And it's existed since the first caveman bartered with his neighbor caveman.
Yeah.
Oog wants something from Og, and I'll give you this and you give me that. This has existed for that long.
Wow.
Business, anything that's transactional, yearns for stasis. It yearns for static. I don't want it to change. I don't want the world to change. I don't want the price to change. I don't want my customers to change. I don't want to have to change the way we do anything. I just want things to stay the same. I don't want change.
Yeah, we like stability.
And
Yet
we
the only
live
constant is change.
the world we exist in, the only thing it cannot do is be static.
Hmm.
It's not possible. It's like you can't travel at the speed of light. You can travel faster or slower, but how do you get faster if you can't go at it, right? So that's kind of one of those eternal, how do you do that? So what happens is when they're faced with change that they don't know how to deal with because they're in a new environment, they're growing, they're succeeding, they're expanding. And when you grow, I mean, think about it. If you have 30 customers and you grow to 300 customers, you can't manage 300 customers the way you manage 30.
Yeah,
If
completely
you have
different.
20 employees, how about this? You have 4 employees and you grow to 20 employees. You can't manage them the same way. You grow to
Yeah.
400 employees, you got to it's got to be a whole change in how you operate that business. And when you make decisions that are not good, you undermine the integrity of the organization and its operations. So the first person that looked at book, so many things I want to say, so little time. 70% of the book is the data that I've extracted. About 20% of it, excuse me, are um, stories and my opinions and certain explanations about things, and then about 10% is some of my personal theory and my personal approach. And I'm very clear about that. I say in the book that this is what worked for me and it should work for you, but that doesn't mean it will.
Yeah.
And the first
Good way to
person,
frame it.
yeah, well, and that's really true. I mean, I don't care how big or successful you are. If there's 9 billion people in the world, let's just say for the sake of argument that I've got 5,000 people that I'm directly, and I don't mean Facebook, I mean in my contacts database, people whose name I know and who know my name.
Yeah.
That's 5,000 people out of 9 billion. That's nothing. I have no exposure. It's nothing. So how can I possibly say this is right for every culture, every environment, every geography, every human being?
Yeah.
You can't do that. It doesn't work. It's about teaching people the underlying theory behind what you've learned. And the nuts and bolts of this is if you can create clarity of purpose, consistency of performance, and engagement of people, you will not fail.
I love that. And you call that the 3 Ps in your book too.
The 3 Ps. And
Yeah.
it's funny because everybody I talk to, they're like, well, first let me tell you this, because I got a big kick out of this. I had several people helping me with the book early on. Technical. There's a whole bunch of types of editing that you really want to do if you want to do a professional book. And the one of the first comments was, Larry, how do you have a chapter? How do you have a business book without a chapter on finance? And I said, well, finance doesn't have anything to do with business failure. It doesn't have anything to
Yeah.
do with business suicide. So what do you mean? I said, well, if you have a financial failure, what that basically means is you ran out of money, right? Right. And what that means is that you made a decision days, weeks, months, or years ago to do something that cost you money that you didn't expect, right? Right. Well, so is the running out of money what made you go broke, or is the decision you made that made
Good
you run out
point.
of money the
Cause and
reason you
effect.
failed? And they go,
Yeah.
oh. And I said, look, I'm not arguing that it's not important. I'm saying it's never the cause.
Yeah.
Financial indicators are lagging indicators. Once you have a financial indicator that shows a problem, it's too late. The problem exists. I'm trying to help people not have those problems. So I've got this line. I'm just rambling. Lenora, you got to stop me if I'm going too fast. But I say,
I love that you circled back to, or that you had mentioned specifically the three P's. And what was the line that you were just thinking of?
so I've developed a tool to measure the capacity of an organization to create sustainable, profitable growth using leading non-financial indicators.
You created a tool.
A tool. And
That's intriguing.
if you go, so the way this works is the organizations live in three states of maturity. There's a study, there's a philosophical, what's the word I would use? There's a field of study of human-based organizations that's known as corporate life cycle theory. It's the study of how organizations grow and die. It's no different than thinking about, I have a child, they get potty trained, they wear diapers, they lose their baby teeth, they go through puberty, we get old, the knees wear out, the hair wears out, it's the same thing. And because they're all people, it turns out that corporate life cycle theory is it's like 100% accurate. It just doesn't vary. It's very interesting. And I strongly suggest, if any of your listeners are interested, particularly if they're early stage, go look up corporate life cycle theory or business life cycle theory. And there's 5 or 6 different theorists. This was developed in the 80s and promoted in the 90s. And a lot of them deal with maturity. So from my research, I found there were 3 stages of maturity. And in each stage of maturity, failure comes for a different reason. So I said, if that's the case, how do I measure, right? So I identified 8 components. There's 3 in the first stage, 3 in the second stage, 2 in the third stage. It's youth, adolescence, adulthood. And there's a tool in chapter 12. So the first 3 chapters are background, why I got started, how I got started, some of the research, some of the findings, talks about things like the arc of success and, the problem with success. And I talk a lot about assumptions masquerading as facts and common signs that you need to watch out for. And so then the 8 chapters, the next 8 chapters, 4 through 11, are on each of the 8 indicators.
Is that the common signs?
Those are the common signs.
Yep. Awesome.
And then in 12, no, there's other, no, those are not the common signs. It's something different. There are 3 things you have to complete successfully to mature from youth to adolescence. There are 3 things you have to complete successfully to mature from adolescence to adulthood. And in adulthood, there's 2 things you have to do to continue to survive. So you look at a company like Sears and you say, why is Sears bankrupt? They reached adulthood and didn't do those 2 things. Okay.
Very
so
interesting. Okay.
In youth, it's a lack of clarity of purpose. And this is so common. People say to me, what do you mean? Of course we know why we're here. I say, fine, okay. How many employees do you have? 20. Okay, let's take 5 of them, 6 of them, all 20 of them. I don't care. Let's take more than 5. Let's take 5 or more. And just independently, not as a group, one at a time, like via email, ask them to write down the purpose of the company that they work for. Just tell me what your purpose is, or tell me what we sell, or tell me what we do. I don't care what the question is, but make it global. And I guarantee you will not get 2 answers that are the same. They'll be close, but they won't be the same.
Yeah.
Now, you can't tell me that your staff has clarity of purpose if they don't all have the same answer to that question.
Which would make it really important to have clarity of purpose.
And that's what happens. The one example of the way they fail is in youth, there's this thing called go-go. It's a corporate life cycle stage. So you give birth, you have a product, you say, somebody should buy this. I know somebody that'll buy it. So you try to find somebody to buy it. And then you say, who else can I sell this to? Well, let's sell it to them. And then somebody says, well, I would like that, but I would also like this. Oh, well, let's make that. So we'll give them that. So you end up with is all of these people telling you they want your stuff, and you got to do a lot of tailoring and a lot of specialization and a lot of catering. And then if you find one or two things that really hit, like Beanie Babies, right? Now you're in what's called go-go, which means I can't make enough to sell everything I can make. And I can't even run the company. We're moving so fast, either manufacturing or delivering services, that we can't even do our admin. It's known as go-go.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is you end up selling to customers who are not ideally suited to the purpose you exist. So
Say
when
that
you
again. You
do
sell to
that,
customers who are
so
not
when you
right.
do that, you
Yeah.
do not, when you don't have clarity of purpose, you don't know who to say no to, and you don't know what to say no to, because you start up and everything in your world is, I got to sell something to somebody.
Yeah.
And
Is that
getting
your
away
insights?
from that is difficult. Sorry, go ahead.
Is that your insights as to why Beanie Babies didn't survive very well?
Well, remember, my research was no retail, and that's a retail company.
Oh, that is
I
true.
believe Beanie Babies didn't survive because I don't believe they had a good long-term business plan, and I don't think they had good long-term value. But
Very interesting.
if they had the right leadership, they would have been able to take that momentum and that market, those people and the money, and find a way to create something that was sustainable.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I say this about every single failed company. It's the fault of the leadership.
That must be
People's,
hard to not only say for that person, but also to hear as the leader of a company. That must be really difficult to hear.
that's an interesting comment. And the thing that I will say to you is that good leaders love to be reminded of that. Bad leaders hate to hear it.
Wow. That's powerful.
If you look at my website, the homepage says, no business ever failed due to external forces. That's the first thing you see. And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
People say to me, oh, wait a minute. COVID put all these businesses out of business. I say, well, let's start by eliminating all the retail businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not where my research was. That was not where my focus was. That's not where my interest was. That's where my not where my knowledge is. But let's look at a different kind of a business in the entertainment business. Let's look at Disney. Of all the organizations you can think of in the world, who do you think is the most dependent on bringing large groups of people together?
Oh, I would imagine Disney is probably a big player in there.
Huge. Theme parks and movie theaters. COVID
Mm,
had to shut both of those down.
yeah.
The first year, and I write about this in the book, in the very first year, Disney stock plummeted in 2020. COVID was announced in February. The shutdown started in March. I know, because
Mm-hmm.
we were going to France in April, and we didn't
Mm-hmm.
get out of the country for 3 years. By the end of the third quarter, Disney stock was at a modern day low, and people were worried about them surviving. And by the end of 2021, Disney was one of the best performing stocks of the year, because the leadership team got together and said, what do we do? They looked at their purpose, they looked at their assets, they looked at their mechanisms, and they said, we just need to change the way we deliver value. We're not changing the value we deliver, we're changing the way we deliver it. Because what do they deliver? They deliver entertainment. That's when they made the big push to move from on-ground entertainment to online entertainment.
Yeah.
Right?
I know as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you would agree, especially as somebody who wrote a book, language is so important. So even in that sentence, they didn't change the value they were delivering. They changed the way they delivered value. And that really, just those two words, the way, really allows from that limited thinking of, oh my goodness, what am I going to do, to what might I be able to do? What are the possibilities when I get to change the way that I deliver value?
Right. So I was talking about this tool that I created. I call it the Business Managers Reality Index, the BMRI, the Business MRI. And access to it is online. And the only way to get it is to buy the book or to talk me into giving it to you, which I'm not going to do. But it's in chapter 12. Chapter 12 is bringing it all together. It's a very short chapter. It's like 8 pages. And it explains what the tool is. I reference it throughout the book, but what it does is it's an 8-question survey. It's a very short survey. It shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes if you know your business.
Questions.
And they're literally just yes or no questions. They're very simple. You go through it and it ranks the 8 indicators, the 8 components of purpose, performance, and people from weakest to strongest. And it says, this is your weakest. So now instead of don't work on your business, work on this one area. And in the book, I tell people, and that's really where the value is. If you want value, the stories are great, the anecdotes are great, the insights are great, the instructions are great. To me, the most important thing is I don't have time. And if I can figure out where to spend my time more effectively, if you find the right area, just having somebody say to you, these are 8 areas these are the only 8 things you need to pay attention to operationally within your business. I'm not talking about your product or your service or the quality of it. I'm talking about the administrative component of running the business. It's only 8 things you need to worry about. And you don't need to worry about them you have to deal with them in the right order. And you don't want to be doing 2 of them at once. So in the book,
so in the right order, you want to deal with them in the right order and only 8 things. I feel like that gives a lot of clarity.
And only one at a time.
Yeah.
So what this gives you is it gives you your weakest to your strongest. And what I always tell people when they start going down, I call it the business suicide prevention program. And when you start going down this path, what you want to do is look at your 3 weakest, not the weakest, but the 3 weakest, and say, which is going to have the greatest impact on my business today? Pick that one. Because just because your weakest is your weakest doesn't mean you'll get the most benefit from it in the short term. Once you get that one thing cleaned up, go back, take the survey again. Now start with your weakest.
Nice. What are some, so you mentioned that they have to do with people and purpose, and also I'm forgetting the other.
Performance.
Performance. Thank you.
Yeah.
So those 8
purpose,
questions,
performance, people.
I did them backwards. So they all have all 8 questions have to do with those 3 areas.
3 of them deal with purpose, 3 of them deal with performance, 3 of them deal with people.
Okay, so 9. Awesome.
Yeah.
I guess there's overlap.
And each of the chapters on those 8 components, those 8 components are really the nut, right? They're the chewy nugget. And in each of those chapters, I start by talking about what it is, and then I talk about the benefits of doing it. So this is why it's valuable to you.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't understand the value, it's like, why would I bother doing this? And then I give an anecdote that demonstrates either a failure or a strength around this one component. And then I talk about how do you create it? How do you implement it? How do you maintain it?
Wow,
And that's each of the 8 chapters. So, and there's a lot of because you can tell by the title, I'm in your face, I'm very direct. I've been called an acquired taste, which I find very flattering. Most people don't, but I do. The common feedback I get from people is the first 3 chapters were really a grind. It was like every business book. It's like they're very hard to read. But it's it was good. It wasn't bad. It's just, it's a business book. It's not like I'm reading, I'm trying to think of a fiction writer, Clancy or, Stephen King. But and then I started reading chapter 4 and then I was done. And I thought, where the hell did the book go? And it's because when you get into chapter 4 and you start reading about this stuff, not only is there lots of story, but it's a lot of compelling. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know this. I felt that. I know what he's talking. Yeah, we went through this. Oh, yeah. And
Relatable.
you're flipping the pages and you get to the end and you're like, oh my God, I'm done. And,
Aw.
one of the things that I love is in the section on marketing. One of the chapters is on marketing, one of the 8 components. And the first thing I say is, if you've got marketing chops, skip this chapter. There's nothing new here. Read the rest of the book. And if you think you like the way I've approached this stuff, come back to this chapter and read it then. And if you find something you like, great. If don't, that's fine.
Oh,
So
that's really.
I'm a little outside of the norm,
Hmm.
It's like I really don't care about selling books. I care about getting people this information. And I know that if I do that, that I'll get all the money I need, and I don't need that much money,
Hmm.
but it comes.
It does. You mentioned that the other day while we were talking. I love that.
I
Is
haven't done any marketing for 25 years.
is there a story of suicide that happened that really stands out in your mind and you think, if they just had this tool, this would have really helped them?
Well, I did. I I I I've owned 13 different there's 13 businesses I've owned in my life that I can remember, and in multiple industries. And one of the more successful ones was I killed it. I mean, I literally committed business suicide.
Wow.
And it was because I failed to understand our purpose. And and because of that, I was unable to create consistent levels of performance. See, when you can't create consistent levels of performance, you can't make commitments to people that you can live up to.
That's
That's
powerful.
that's what people don't understand about performance. They think performance is speed. It's not. McDonald's is not high quality. There's nothing about McDonald's that's special except one thing. There's only one thing about McDonald's that's special. When you go to buy something from them, you know everything there is to know. You know the cost, you know the wrapper, you know the taste, you know where it is on the menu, you know how long it's going to take to get it. You know what you're buying.
Very
There's no
predictable. Yeah.
blind spots. They are consistent. Every
Mhm.
time you get a Big Mac, it's the same Big Mac. The flavor doesn't vary. The packaging doesn't vary.
Point.
That's why people go to McDonald's, because they don't want to
Hmm.
be surprised. That's why
Yeah.
they got so big. So that ability to deliver consistent levels of performance is key. And you can't do it if you don't understand your purpose, if you don't understand what's important in terms of the value delivered to the market you serve.
That is powerful.
Yeah. It was just research. I talk about this stuff and I get this all the time. God, it's just so good. It's so, how did you come up with this? It's like, no, 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 no. I didn't come up with this. This is research. This is literally primary research, looking for reasons why businesses fail or get into trouble and find their way out, putting the data together, analyzing it, and going, oh my God, here's the common factors. Here's what's going on.
I think that's one of my favorite things about your book is that there is so much research involved. 23
Yeah.
years of data.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's not anything to, kind of wave at. That's not 6 years, 5 years, 23, 20 plus years. That's
Yeah. That's
amazing.
longer than the average marriage in this country.
Oh, I would imagine that. And quite honestly, I think it's probably even longer than a lot of businesses, the life of their business. So it's really, really powerful. What about do you have one where you realized, wow, it was because I had these insights. This is what made it successful, my business successful.
Well, not that I can tell briefly. I can tell you that one of my clients, and this might even be in one of the anecdotes. One of my clients was a partnership, and
Okay.
they were 3 people who had worked for a large corporation selling services. Getting into the details is not important. What's important is they weren't manufacturing anything. And they hated the corporate environment and they liked each other. They were working together and they agreed, let's go start our own company. So they went and started their own company doing the same thing, and they were miserable. And it turned out that one of them, all he ever wanted to do was sell. The other one, all he ever wanted to do was like the back office administrivia, the record keeping and documentation and stats, that stuff. And the third one, all he ever wanted to do was to do customer service and support existing clients. They were in a corporate environment where they had to do all three, but they had a lot of corporate support.
Ah,
When they left the corporate world, they got out of the crib, they got out of the baby blanket, and they
yeah.
realized that they all had to sell, do customer service, and do administrative work, and all had to be responsible for it. They were miserable. And they came to me and said, how do we fix this? And I said, you got to break up the partnership. The guy that
Yeah.
wants to sell needs to go be an independent contractor selling for somebody doing this. The guy that wants to be in administration needs to go back to the corporate world, and you need to hire people who can do the selling for you and the admin for you while you maintain the relationship with the customer, because that's the most important thing in your business. And
Very
that's
much so.
exactly what they did. And incredibly successful.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. I love the
Yeah,
insights too, especially because when we're in something so personable as our own business, to be able to go to somebody and say, we need somebody else's perspective. We want to survive. We're just not sure what we're doing wrong. It's
right.
massively valuable.
Well, and there's another lesson, and I like that story because in that story, there's a lesson about partnerships.
Yeah.
And a lot of small businesses start that way. A couple of buddies get together, we can do this and get paid for it. And before anybody has ownership or equity in a business, such as in a partnership, and I've been involved in a few of them, I think three, probably more. No, I'm sure there's more than that. There's a very simple rule that you really have to live by, and that is you don't give ownership to somebody who doesn't have value you can't pay for.
You don't give ownership to someone who doesn't have value you can't pay for.
So
That
let me
is
say it
very
another way.
powerful.
There's a lot of negatives in there. So let me say it this way. If one of your buddies is a brilliant salesperson, don't give him equity in the company. You can hire a salesperson.
Okay.
If one of your buddies has connections to the market you serve and knows decision makers and has access to things that you can't just go get access to, that's worth equity.
That's much clearer. Yeah, definitely.
If you have somebody who's a genius with ideas and the ideas are good and they tend to work, you can't go hire that. That's worth equity. But you've
That's
got
right.
to be able to monetize it, right?
Yeah.
So don't bring your buddies in, pay them. Don't be cheap. Have them help you raise money. Have them help you get your business going. And if you need to have them wait for some of their money, that's fine. But don't say, I'll give you half the company. Don't say, I'll give you a third of it. Don't do that. You're
Mhm.
just boxing yourself in. I've seen this over and over and over.
Wow,
How do
that's
you
really
know?
powerful.
How do you know what you need? It's
Yeah.
very hard to know.
Yeah.
Branson talks about this a lot.
Oh,
Who else? The Turner, the guy who started CNN, and
okay.
Branson is Virgin.
Yeah. Richard Branson.
Those two people talk about this a lot. There are three skill sets that you need to run a business. And there's no two people, there's no human being on earth that has them all three. Nobody. Not me, not
Hmm.
you. Branson says I don't.
Hmm.
Bill Gates says he doesn't have them. Turner says he doesn't have them. Even our crazy Tesla guy, Elon Musk,
Elon
he says
Musk.
I don't have them. There are three skills, and you have to bring other people in to do stuff. So don't
Hmm.
pretend that you can do it, and don't pretend that your friends have those skills. You
That's a
need
really
people
good
that
one.
have those skills so they can have equity in what they're going to help build.
Yeah.
And
There
it's
was
that
once,
stuff. It's the back office. It's the product creation. and it's how to manage money. Those are the 3 skills.
Yeah. There was once somebody had shared with me some insights, especially when it comes to money. They had said it's not personal, it's professional. And it
Yeah.
feels like that's quite literally what you're sharing with people. You know, it's yeah, you might have a great buddy, but it's not personal, it's professional. And you
Well,
want
and
to keep that.
there's some quotes in here from my dad that I just love. And
Mhm.
one of his quotes is one of them quotes is giving a customer credit is the most intimate thing you'll ever do.
Um,
More intimate than relations with your spouse,
yeah.
because you're putting your hands in their pockets. Actually, really what you're doing is letting them put their hands in your pockets,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So don't ever tell somebody how to spend their money.
I love that one.
Yeah. There's just lots of good stuff in here.
That is very true. I've had the pleasure of reading several pages from it as I was preparing for this. So I love that. But especially quotes like that, I think are truly, truly powerful. And when they come from somebody else and you get to apply them in another area, you can see how they really apply throughout your entire life. It's not just specific to that one book.
Yeah. So you got to read one of the quotes. There's quotes all over the book. So this is in one of the chapters on planning. Planning is the secret weapon of all small business. If you can get yourself to master the process of planning, you will solve many, many problems. So here's the quote. Planning is an unnatural process. It is much more fun to do something. The nicest thing about not planning is that failure comes as a complete surprise rather than being preceded by a period of worry and depression.
That is a very good point as a complete surprise. I like that one. That's a great one.
Yeah, I tried to make this fun. I tried to make it valuable, and
I believe you succeeded, sir.
I hope so. I appreciate that. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback, and
That's wonderful.
it's been a wonderful learning experience for me. So I'm
That's
grateful for the
really
opportunity
exciting.
to talk about it, obviously.
That's awesome. What is one thing that you hope your readers take away from the book? I know it's a big one.
Well, I'm trying to put it in the context of my audience, your audience, as I understand them. And that is, I think the most valuable thing for them to be aware of is the need for clarity of purpose. And I go
Mhm.
back to this asking your staff what they think your purpose is. You have to understand the value you're delivering. You have to understand who you're delivering it to, who has the value, who sees the
Mhm.
value. You have to understand how you're going to get the value to them. You have to understand your long-term goals in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. What do we want to be? Where do we want to be?
Yeah.
And you got to decide the environment you want to operate in, the things that are just unarguable standards that they're just no goes. It's like, we just will not do this. This is the way we're going to behave. This is the way we're going to treat people. This is the way we're going to act. This is a culture we're going to create. That's purpose. That's clarity of purpose. And if you can get that stuff in writing, doesn't do any good to be in your head. It's got to be written down. If you can get that down in writing, you are miles ahead of 70% of the startups out there.
It's a powerful question, or even just to reflect on personally and professionally. Clarity of
It
purpose.
sounds simple, but it is really hard to do.
Yes, yes,
It
especially because it
usually,
evolves.
well, it usually takes about 5 days to get that documented with my clients. And these are
Mhm.
clients that have been in business 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, Larry. It was great. Is there anything else you want to share with these amazing listeners that have had the pleasure to hear you today?
The only thing I would say is if you go to Amazon, you can do a look inside, so you can see a lot of the opening of the book, get a sense of who I am and what the table of contents is and my style. And if you like it and you buy it, um, just please leave me an honest review.
I love that.
Amazon's a great way to get it because Amazon discounts it all the time. I don't discount it. And you can get the Kindle version, you can get the regular version, the paperback version, and there will be an audiobook coming out soon. So
That's
if you like it,
exciting.
go check it out. That's the thing I would say to you is for in your own best interest, go take a look.
That's exciting. And if they want to reach you on your website, what's your website?
Yep. Mandelberg.biz. There's two websites. There's Mandelberg.biz and there's businessesdon'tfail.com. Those are being merged. They're going to continue to exist, but they're being completely rebuilt, and it's going to all be focused on businessesdon'tfail.com.
Awesome.
There's a lot of information in the blog. There's 130, 150 videos, posts, lots and lots of stuff in the blog. Most of the stuff I did for that I wrote for the Business Journal when I wrote for them is in there. And that's another good way for you to get valuable information and to get a lot of what's in the book. I also have a monthly newsletter, and my open rates are at 45%. So for almost
Pretty good.
2,000 people, it's unheard of in my industry. So
Mhm.
somebody must like it. That's evidence outside of Larry.
Clearly.
So I try to bring as much value as I can to the market. There's a lot of ways for him to get it. So please look for
You
something, and hopefully it's of value to you.
you are absolutely succeeding, sir. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. We'll be sure to have it in the show notes. It was fantastic spending time with you, and thank you to our listeners for spending time with us.